The Porsche 911 has become the reference sports car, with endless variants to please almost anyone, assuming your bank account is well stocked. The 911 Turbo has been sought after for decades and continues to get faster and more usable. However, we're human and we need something to complain about. So while it may do everything, it lacks the X factor many want from a $200,000 car. Something that the new Aston Martin Vantage aims to fix. With more refinement, style, and V8 power, it adds the visual appeal and tire shredding power to out-character the Porsche. In this video, Aston Martin and Porsche have supplied engineers and resources for us to set lap times back to back and explain the unique philosophies of both. Everyone wants to know how these magnificent machines have been manufactured or engineered, Jack. So I'm gonna sit back, enjoy my children's snack, and you can feed me all of the information.
All right, let's start with the Aston Martin Vantage. This is a 2025. I spoke at length with one of the engineers, James, who's been kind enough to answer a lot of my technical questions, along with Morgan, our rep. So if you want to learn everything there is to learn about this car, watch my launch video, which you were not in, and Zach from The Smoking Tire was in instead. But here's the high levels. This is their latest generation of the Vantage. About 80% of the mechanical hardware is brand new for this model year, this generation, and has a brand new electrical architecture. All the body panels are different. However, at its core, it is a double wishbone, all aluminum, longish but short wheelbase for Aston, true sports car. It's not a track car, it's a sports car GT. This is their entry-level vehicle, even though it is still very, very expensive at just under $200,000. It makes 650 horsepower, 590 foot-pounds of torque. It is rear drive. It does not have all the crazy electromechanical systems the Turbo has. It just has adaptive dampers, the latest Bosch stability and traction control, an eDiff, an 8-speed automatic, a ZF 8-speed auto. It's their latest iteration, the 75, which means it has new oiling, it's faster shifting, it has an Aston-specific torque converter, and it has a 4-liter twin-turbo hot V V8, the M177, sourced from AMG. However, it has unique heads, cams, and turbos.
So it's not just a crate Mercedes engine any longer. It's been heavily modified.
By Aston, for Aston. This was a handmade car, and to support all of the burly horsepower and torque, you have all the coolers you could possibly ask for. Due to the new styling, you have a much bigger front opening, you have an oil cooler down here, you have a trans cooler in the front bumper, and this is a transaxle as well. It's one of the few 8-speed ZF transaxles I know that exists. The weight balance is actually, despite this being a front engine car, it's more front mid, and it actually has a rear biased weight balance. And it's a heavy car, it's about 3,900 pounds.
Okay, so what's unique about this compared to the Porsche that we're going to look at, Jack, in terms of this is all aluminum body? Anything specific that makes this unique?
I think in the modern era of everything that is highly digital, this is as true to a basic rear drive sports car as you can possibly buy. No rear steer, no active bars, no crazy mechanical torque vectoring. It just has an eDiff, torque vectoring by brake, and a lot of horsepower.
It's been almost 20 years since I dominated the computing industry with once-in-a-generation talent, but my skills have dwindled. After making car videos on the internet, I have reached heights that my ex-wife told me was not possible, like driving 800 horsepower supercars, getting free meals at Michelin star restaurants, and meeting female fans who have named their children after me. I am losing my passion. And between us professionals, I am carrying dead weight. Jack and his 7-figure max contract have smoked the books and affected my ability to purchase vacation homes. I have tried implementing PIPs, but that did not work. He kept closing deals. Next, I used my advanced skills in Adobe Flash to create a virtual twin, but I still have only reached 90% correlation. I needed an extra edge. I hired a best-in-class team to regenerate his essence digitally using world-class data centers, and sadly, the results were not best in class. So I got this video sponsored by 1010. I was ready to get back on the horse and knew my life was going to change in the technology world. There was no way I was going to go back to MIT again as a high-powered CEO, CFO, CIO, and food and beverage chairman, and neither should you. 1010 is agnostic to skill level, whether you are at a dead-end job or have it all like me and still need more knowledge. 1010's boot camps will help build a new portfolio of skills. If you are lost in the woods, they offer free consultations to get the ball rolling. Around 87% of those who go through one of the various programs land jobs within 6 months, and if you don't, they offer refunds. But if you are a guy like me, I don't need a job. I need more data points, and that's also a perk, and now I am crushing software development. I went from generating feeble results to having a nearly 97% clone of Jack and his sensibilities. You may not even know the difference when I am finished. Improve your career using my code SAVAGEGEESE for 30% off on all their programs, and click the link in my description or scan the QR code for a free career consultation. Now let's talk about the 992 911 Turbo, not the Turbo S. I want to know the power numbers immediately.
All right, this does 0 to 60 in like 2.8 or 2.9 seconds. Does a quarter mile in 10.7 or 10.8. It has all-wheel drive traction, and it makes under 600 horsepower. It's like 573. It makes a little less than the Turbo S. It goes a little slower than the Turbo S, and honestly, the big differences are the turbos are different than the Turbo S, though the block is identical, and you get carbon ceramics as an option versus a standard, and you don't get center lock wheels standard. It is an option. This is a typical 992 non-GT car 911, which means a strut front, multi-link rear, and Porsche has thrown every single electromechanical system from a sports car onto this thing to get this thing in and out of corners like nothing else. It is a far more modern looking car underneath. While everything's aluminum in both cars, this thing is entirely covered up. They have focused on aero. So you have active aero on this car. You have an active front splitter and an active wing. You have PDCC, which is their active sway bars on this car. So 48 volt sway bars with actuators from BWI that stiffen or soften the bars to increase or decrease body roll and make sure the ride quality is good. Both of these cars get adaptive dampers. The Aston gets Bilstein DTXs. This, I think, either gets ZF or Bilstein dampers. They're very, very good. And you get rear steer on this car. You have two individual motors in the back wheels that tow in and tow out the wheels to get this thing in and out of corners. You also have all-wheel drive, and just like the Aston, you get an e-diff. When it comes to the drivetrain or the engine, just like the Aston, you have every cooling situation you could possibly throw at it. It is a flat six in typical Porsche fashion, and it is also a twin turbo. If you look at the weight of this car, it is also quite a bit lighter than the Aston. It's 200 pounds lighter. It is a smaller vehicle in overall footprint. It's a smaller wheelbase. When it comes to tires, that's something we didn't talk about in the Aston. When it comes to Porsche, you're running a much narrower front tire. It's a 255 versus the Aston's 275. They're similar tread wear for compound, but what the Aston has done is they've done their first ever bespoke Michelin tire. They work specifically with Michelin to do this. And in a future video, we'll be working with our title sponsor, Bridgestone. We're gonna walk you through what that actually means. People talk about bespoke tires all the time, but with the help of our friends at Bridgestone, we're gonna walk you through how they have engineered tires with an OE, in their case Lamborghini, to work with their suspension engineers and chassis engineers to fully make a spec tire.
And that goes into tire modeling on the back end, the testing, the compound testing, the sidewall design, the inner layers. I mean, there's a lot that goes into
It's not just
design.
marketing.
Yeah, it's not a bunch of garbage. So I'll be interested to see that. But more importantly, on the front end, when you mentioned a narrow tire on the Porsche, the common knowledge is if you have a rear-wheel drive car, you don't necessarily need a double wishbone or a multi-link front. But Porsche has proven that the double wishbone setup on the 911 pays huge dividends in terms of front-end stability. The Aston just comes default with double wishbone, where this Porsche, the non-GT cars, come with a struck front end. So I'll be curious to see how that works out on the street, more importantly, the track.
All right, Mark, with that, let's go drive these cars on our favorite farm road before we hit Autobahn Country Club. You gonna take that graham cracker with you?
and make some s'mores. Am I gonna lose my egg sandwich?
You're about to find out, Mark.
Holy shit. I forget how violent the launch control is on this car. People are like, oh, you throw your head back on purpose. No, these cars launch that hard. It's
really
crazy.
Fast. All right. One of the things I'm going to talk about, Mark, before we do anything else, is the drivetrain and the fact that this car is all-wheel drive. And I think what the 911 Turbo delivers on that almost no other car, including the Aston, does, is it delivers on the promise of the original NSX. It is a car that you can use all the time. It feels like a regular car. It doesn't feel particularly special when you putt around in it, and it just functions as a car. And I think a lot of that's due to the fact that the drivetrain in this car is all-wheel drive and just does everything. You don't think about anything ever when you're driving this vehicle. It has traction. Some of the basic handling characteristics of this car, from the street carry over the track, you sort of wait for the front end to turn in, then you get on the gas. It's drama-free. The PDK in this car is nearly expertly calibrated. It is better calibrated than the ZF8 Speed. It downshifts faster, upshifts quicker. It never is in the wrong gear ever. It's an incredibly competent feeling car. So it's like blending the daily usability of that philosophy with Gen 1 NSX with the sort of mechanical ferocity of like a GTR. It's all-wheel drive. It's a twin turbo, 6-cylinder engine. A lot of these electromechanical systems make this car super easy to drive really, really fast. There's really nothing else like this, period, today.
Yeah, on the street, as a street car that does everything. And I know I kind of thought about this earlier, and I know it's going to sound very weird, but when you look at it and compare it to some of the commodity cars, right? Like, you look at the perfection in commodity cars like Camry, Civic. Like, Civic specifically is the gold standard for a compact car in this era. And this has all those things that have been perfected in a regular car, a normal car, without being weird or cumbersome to use or frustrating.
Visibility, inputs, yeah.
Yeah, and then you combine all of the perfection in a high-performance machine in terms of engineering, how everything's set up as a street car. It handles well, it drives well, it has all the traction, the stability, the ride comfort, all of it is the perfect package. So what's the but? On the street, what is the but?
It's going to sound like an excuse. It doesn't have the X factor that the Aston has. Does this ride better on the street, over bumps like this? Yes. It is a more compliant car than the Aston is, despite the Aston being softer on the track and general body motion. But I think it's a mix of the fact that the flat six and the Porsche is basically the same, while it's a different engine, but it sounds similar to like a basic Carrera with a sports exhaust.
Right.
When you look back at the car, it doesn't have this huge X factor because the visibility is so good. When we've been in so many Porsches, it just feels like a regular car.
Yeah.
Whereas we're about to show in the Aston, there's an X factor. While it may not be as technically competent in some regards that exists in the car, that doesn't exist in this one.
Yeah, it's a very difficult thing to explain to somebody unless you've been in cars. This is, as much as it is the complete package and the technical proficiency and everything has been sorted out with it, it feels so, because it's so good, it feels so normal.
That German engineer is very mad at us right now.
I know, it's
the perfect car.
I know it is.
You don't like it?
And no, there's nothing. I mean, I could make excuses for why it's great, but it just feels so normal. And it goes back to the X factor of cars like this is the emotion.
Yes.
Right? And as emotion is not a tangible, measurable thing per se. And you spend 5 minutes in both cars and you can see the rough edges of the Aston, the sound, the visual aspect of the Aston, because they do not have to keep that car in the box of what a 911 is. Like, the 911 has to be in this box. They can't deviate. So it loses that X factor that an Aston has, or some of these supercars have, that just bring more of emotion to it. And I know Porsche's like, we can bring the emotion in all these perfected ways, and it's not enough.
See, to me, as we're about to explain as we get into the Aston here in a second, the difference between the Aston and the 911 is, do you want a college professor as your significant other?
Yeah.
Or do you want someone a little bit more exotic? I'm not saying pole dancer, but maybe salsa dancer.
Yeah,
do you want someone that might...
The passion, the thing is like, I think you go back to the 911 argument and why people constantly go back to this car.
Oh, I love this car.
They go to all these other cars. They might have the Ferrari, the Lambos, the Astons, the McLarens. They might go through all those, but they generally wind up having a 911 in their garage in some form factor. And I think people will always go back to this and then eventually just have it as their primary. And that's why you always say, well, just get a 911. It's always like, get a Miata or, get a Civic. If you're just getting a basic car, it's the car you get when you're tired of the emotional baggage of all the other supercars and specialty cars.
All right, Mark, so with that, let's head into the Aston. Let's experience the V8. Vantage, Mark. V8 twin turbo.
Huh? What's that mean?
Show me.
Well, it's definitely not as violent as the 911, but it takes about 5 seconds of driving this to understand there's a bit of a different character baked into this
character.
car. Yeah, V8 character, long wheelbase, bigger GT car style, from the steering to the brake pedal feel to the sound to the experience. It's a completely different animal, and
This feels like a bigger car.
oh, yeah,
Way bigger
it feels
car.
massive.
Yes.
I mean, just the general feeling of it is massive. But I think, aside from clearly this isn't snap your neck back fast off the line, but it pulls and pulls as you just start accelerating.
In-gear accelerator.
Yeah. It is absolutely overkill to the Maximus, and it delivers, again, going back to the 911 discussion, it delivers that emotional experience. It instantly puts a smile on your face for different reasons than the 911.
You said this to me when we were driving this early on. This is a middle finger in a suit.
Yeah.
Your index and your ring finger are the jacket.
Yep, you got a bow tie on your middle finger, and it's just like, hey, I got business to do. Fuck you. But it's not the, when I say that, it's not the douchebag factor. There's just this elegance to this car in the way that it's presented. It's like the guy that's showing up in perfectly pedicured.
Yeah.
He's got the shoes that have been shined every 10 steps he takes. He stops to clean them. Like, it just feels that way. But underneath,
He's an ape.
He's a straight up ape. He's hilarious. He's got a good sense of humor about himself, and the driving experience matches that on the street.
Walk me through the inputs.
Okay, so the steering is definitely, it's slower. It just feels softer. It's easier to manipulate the fact that this thing is going to swing its ass end around like a, it's going to do things like that. Step
like
out on you.
Pure terror.
Yeah. It's going to walk away from you. You're going to have to, obviously, with the systems off, you're having to manage this car's ability not to have everything perfected.
Yes.
And the part of that means you're giving more of yourself to the driving experience versus the machine doing it. And I think that's why I like this, is because that split personality of being that car that has prestige that you park in, everybody's like, that's an Aston Martin.
Yeah.
I want to look at it for more than 5 minutes. You don't see them everywhere. It's got that, and when you drive it, you do feel like it's an experience.
When it comes to ride quality, there's a lot more rebound in this car.
Yeah.
It's weird in that, as we talked about in the shop, this is a really honest sports car. It's double wishbone. You don't have all these active systems other than dampers and a diff. But despite it being a little firmer on the ride, the car moves more on the suspension. It has more pitch, dive, and
It's got
squat.
more of a heave motion.
Yeah.
You know, as it's compressing and coming back up, it has this heaving effect of whoomp, whoomp. You know, as you're coming over stuff, as it raises and lowers itself, it's not as buttoned down. Again, like some of the inputs are slower to manage the fact that you're going to be counter steering this car. Unlike a BMW where you do this and the car is like twitching all over the place. They set this up where if you're losing the back, the steering is 1-to-1 with the way that the body motion is, and that's one of the things I appreciate about the inputs. It's more relaxed in terms of driving, not in a bad way, but again, it's suited to what this car is trying to do dynamically.
This is other than the Lucid Air Sapphire, as you've probably seen in this video already, these are the biggest slip angles I've been able to carry. I mean, yeah, you can easily spin this car, as I've found out.
Oh yeah.
But you know, I think this is a digital car like all modern cars are, but you know, it's a very easy car to sort of understand what you're doing. It talks to you before it bites you. Quickly, the 8-speed in this car, the ZF box, as we've talked about, is it as good as the PDK? No. Is it bad? No. It shifts.
But I think coming from the previous Vantage that we drove to this is like, it's not an evolution. This is a completely, you know, any problem I had with the gearbox in the old car where you felt this jitteriness, like lack of smoothness, just it responds so much quicker. The engine tuning is better here. Like it just feels more cohesive.
And you look at the interior and exterior, this is no longer like, I bought an Aston because of James Bond or the way it looks.
Right.
You buy this car now because it's genuinely a good car.
It's cohesive on the street. It's honest to what it is, and clearly it's not as refined as the 911, and that's the strong suit. And one of the negative things, if you want the mechanical perfection of all these systems like tied together, and you want a button down feeling car, that Aston doesn't deliver it like the 911 back to back, but it's so much better than the car used to be, and it stands out in that way.
All right, Mark, let's head to Autobahn Country Club, sir.
What are we gonna do there, Jack?
I don't know, Mark. Behave, Hit me with that boost, Mark. Boost! Oh, Jesus. 992 Porsche 911 Turbo, Mark. Tell me how this feels.
All I feel is pedigree. I feel pedigree
The
and
dog
confidence. Yeah, I feel dog. No, not that. I used to eat that back in my 20s, but now I've matured.
No, you're a Porsche pedigree,
Yeah,
man?
now I'm a surf and turf man from Red Lobster. This car is all about one thing, Jack.
What's that?
I would say precision. It's just, I mean, I know it's so overplayed with this car, is it's just been refined to the hilt, and everything is so, the confidence of, other than my poor shifting ability, the confidence of this car is just on another level. There's really nothing else like this. I mean, you know, if you're another brand, you're trying to achieve this level of, I don't know, just perfection in so many parts. I mean, when I say perfection, I'm like engineering style perfection. This car lacks a lot of character, namely compared to something like an Aston or a V8 Beast, but it makes up for it in the fact that just it's so easy to drive. There's almost nothing you can pick apart other than, you know, the strut front end compared to a GT3. You're just driving this like thinking, oh, everything just kind of works.
So walk me through the handling balance of this car, how it turns in and how it exits.
I mean, without running the front tires off, I mean, the front end turns in really well. With the rear steer, it's easy mode. You know, and I'm not going flat out because of the temperature out here. Tire temperature, track temperature is cold, but I mean, it's just, like, there's just not a lot of drama to this car. Not a lot you have to do. It's flying, it's fast in a straight line. The brakes are tons of feedback, just tons of feedback. You can be stupid and still recover. You feel everything that's going on in the pedal. You turn the wheel, just a little bit in the back. You feel the rear axle steering just helping you through the corner. You have the all-wheel drive power that just, the car's not moving around.
It's crazy. This is a 5-year-old car now, basically. Coming out of the model year 2020, and it's amazing that there are still basically very few new cars that even come remotely close to this level of just all-wheel drive composure. Compared to the last really all-wheel drive performance car we drove around here was like an NSX Type S, and this is on another planet of performance.
Well, I think, I just don't want to confuse the people watching this that have never driven something like this before. When I say, everything's kind of on easy mode, I don't say that like this is a simulation, because there's plenty of cars that are fast where you feel nothing. That's not this. Like, the input systems, namely, I keep going back to the brakes. Like, I can't stress how important it is to have brake pedal feel in a car it's sad to say that that's disappearing, but the fact that you can, you look at a brake marker and you're like, okay, yes, I know where the ABS actuation point is. I feel it through my foot. You feel things through the steering. You get a good sense of what the front and the back are doing and how well connected they are. So while yes, it is easy, it's easy because you feel what the car is telling you versus you second guessing everything. There's not just 50 layers of insulation between you and the electromechanical systems, which is why I really love this thing. Is it is it gonna make you monkey laugh and feel a sense of fear and loud obnoxiousness? No, that's not this type of car. It doesn't have a big sense of humor. It's just completely
It's very German.
Yeah, no, I mean, but that's what makes it amazing. Nobody else does it like this. So that's why you have 20 cars.
You have a Scrooge McDuck pool of money.
Yes, you have this car to drive around. It does everything, and then you have some monkey machine that just makes you laugh, and your passengers scream in pain and discomfort. So yeah, I really love this thing. I appreciate it more now that I've gotten older and driven more cars too.
All right, Mark. With that, let's go let's drive my kind of car.
Oh, God.
Has a V8. Goes sideways. It's from England.
Sounds scary.
V8, Mark, twin turbo, 590 foot-pounds of torque, 650 horsepower. All right, I'm gonna drive this like a good boy first, Mark, like a gentleman would, as they should. God. All right, Mark. The way I describe the handling balance of this car is in warmer weather, you drive around the front and then you drive around the rear as you run off these big Michelin tires in the front of this car. However, in this colder weather, in this dense air, you manage the rear the entire time. I'm in the middle, stability and traction control, the fastest mode according to the actual Le Mans drivers who helped develop this car and the engineers. It's exciting. I don't think it's anywhere as easy to drive as the turbo, and it's probably not as fast around our track, but Jesus Christ, is this thing brisk? So you drove it, Mark?
Oh yeah, I did. The strange thing about this car is the fact that it's a lot more playful. When I say playful, you're working if you're not working the front, you're working the back, and then you're working the back most of the time.
Yes.
You're constantly making corrections to the back. It's a pure long wheelbase GT rear wheel drive experience that has exceptional balance. You can tell the people that did the vehicle dynamics for this knew that they weren't trying to button it down to the point of being so precise that it took the fun out of driving it. And I'm not somebody that likes an extraordinarily loose car, and this finds some middle ground balance where you can make it go ridiculous, but it's really easy to work the car on the balance side of it, and that's why I really like it, along with the fact that it's just a V8. It's a softer car, it's a GT car that is absolutely hauling ass. So where the Porsche is probably faster, this thing is just, it's actually more entertaining to drive.
Yeah, and then when you drive the car when you turn off torque vectoring. You drive it the way Jack wants to,
Oh,
Mark.
God, no.
It does, basically everything you want it to do.
Oh, boy. Oh, boy. Oh! Yeah, I think that's the thing that that you get out of this car with minimal effort. It's not something if you really want to hoon it around or just make it go sideways. It's just so easy to do.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely, you have to manage where your steering input is, with what gear you're in, with how ham-fisted you want to be with the throttle. But for it to be able to do big slides like that,
Well, I think really the best thing about it is the fact that this thing is really fast on a track. It really is fast, and the fact that it has this multi-character thing. The multi-character approach of where's my air purifier?
All right, now it's time to talk about the thing everybody wants to talk about on the internet, and that is lap times. I'm here with Britt Casey, who set the lap times in this Aston Vantage and the base 911 Turbo. Both cars are run on the same day, at the same time, in the same weather conditions. We ran them both at Autobahn Country Club's South Circuit. Both cars are supported by their own OEM's engineers. Kyle from Porsche came out from Atlanta, and Dale flew all the way from England to Joliet, Illinois to help support this test. We ran the Porsche first and then the Aston, and both cars were on their factory summer tire. Neither of them were a track tire. All the OEMs did were adjust pressures and work with Britt to try to get the most out of the car. Now, let's talk about how different they were, because there was a giant lap time delta between both vehicles. There's no way else to put this. The Aston was about 3-ish seconds a lap slower, like 2.8 slower than the 911 Turbo, which is a lot. That car ran a 132 and change. The Porsche ran a 129 and change, which is very quick. Obviously, the conditions, to be entirely transparent, favored the Porsche due to the fact that it's got all-wheel drive versus rear-wheel drive in the cold weather, but I'm going to be honest, I don't think it's going to make that big of a difference. The general handling themes of both of these cars are always going to be the same. Aston first, how did it drive?
So the cars were on kind of opposite ends of the spectrum in terms of how they drove, and it was interesting to see how they kind of stacked up against each other in real time. So the Aston, the highlight of that car absolutely is the engine.
Power.
The power of it, the torque, the sound, the way it winds out through the RPM range. It's an excellent engine. It's the AMG motor with the Aston heads and engine management. I loved driving that car. Yes, it's slower, but I loved driving
Muscle
that car.
car.
Yeah, it's a British muscle car.
Yeah.
It's a British muscle car with our engineer named Dale.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So it was a great day. But anyways, the car has giant rear tires, and with those rear tires, we used all of it and then exceeded it.
You were busy behind the wheel.
Very much so. So we call it catching snakes when you're when you're correcting oversteer all the time. It's like you're grabbing snakes trying to catch them. So very busy on the steering wheel, trying to chase the car on corner exit. With the goal of laying down power to get the runs out of the corners.
Because the straight line speeds of these cars were remarkably different, but it was just you not being able to put power down,
Correct.
leaving the corner and actually carrying the speed through the corner.
Yeah, I think the one-liner is traction limited. That's what it is. Like that. So that's just meaning like your rear tire limited on how quickly you can deliver full throttle to the car. So we were traction limited with the car, with the temperatures as well. I think it exacerbated that problem. I like the car, but the Porsche obviously did the job better on the racetrack.
Just easy.
And you know what? Whatever we lost in the corners, the Aston Martin was still had higher top speeds at the end of the straightaways. So like it would slow down in the corner and then virtually just blow by the Porsche in a straight line, pass it, and then get get passed again if we were to overlay the laps on top of each other. So the Aston is a straight line, point and shoot car, whereas the Porsche has a lot more finesse to it, I think. The Aston, you have to be finessed with it, but it's a much different type of finesse.
I will tell you, my mere mortal, as I'm the idiot that does all the drifting, the Aston is a spectacular Formula D car. If you were just a complete maniac with it, and it's it's funny, the Porsche, the strut problems of a 911, right? The front, like it's a car that you manage the front, not the rear. I think that's fair.
Yeah, for sure. Especially with the all-wheel drive turbo.
You just put power down and you go.
Yeah.
And you got up to speed almost immediately in the Porsche. Did the brakes feel any different, or were they pretty much the same?
Compared between the two?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you could feel you were stopping more mass with the Aston. Like it would hit great. Like the initial hit of the brakes were great. But it's like, all right, we're slowing down. Still slowing down because we're so heavy, and you could just feel it. Like the car was heavier in the brake zones. With a similar feel on the pedal. The Porsche was just better on the brakes because it's lighter.
Lighter car.
Yeah.
I think that's sort of the takeaway. If anyone watches the two laps of the way the two cars drive, I mean, again, these are both street cars. Neither of them are track cars. And if you are tracking your Vantage everywhere and your turbo, you are a god. Good job. But they're both very interesting. I will say I was much faster in the turbo. And I'm sure if you were purely chasing a lap time, that is the better experience. But from pure just laughter, I took Craig out, Craig, the GM of Autobahn out.
Yeah.
And he laughed like a little boy next to me in the Aston because it is...
I bet.
Yeah.
I bet he did.
So with that, let's head to the final thoughts, sir.
The key takeaway of this video is there's not a perfect car. And if there was, we'd all be driving the exact same thing. So how do you choose the best vehicle? Well, that's really a psychology experiment. Depends on how you were raised and the vehicles you were exposed to as a kid, your driving and ownership experience, and of course, your personality type. That leads me right into the Porsche. People constantly ask, why do you guys keep talking about the 911? Why are people so obsessed with this car? I'm just going to distill this down. Porsche knows exactly what the 911 needs to be. They can focus all their money and engineering on iterating and improving each corner of the car, which is why it is what it is. They're not interested in creating a brand new car and throwing out all their knowledge every couple of years just for the sake of it, which is why it has the look and the feel of what it is. It has one of the best gearboxes, manual and automatic, in the world. It is ballistically fast in a straight line. It's one of the most usable sports cars on the planet. And it rides great on the street and on the track with precision and driver input. It's something very, very hard to do, something that you couldn't do unless you spent years doing it and having the technical and engineering know-how. That's why Porsche is special. But the most important thing, and I'm going to put this out here because it's rarely talked about, when you buy a 911 in 3 years, it's going to hold its value. You're not going to lose your ass and lose 50% of its value like a BMW or many cars. That is why people keep coming back to the 911. And if you have a lot of money, you don't want to just be burning it. So that's really a hard path to follow, but it's also the negative part about the 911 is it's so iterative, they're a dime a dozen with all their variants. It's lost some of that special factor, and that's where Aston Martin comes in. They don't have to be Porsche. You can look at an Aston from 1,000 yards away or 5 feet, and you want to look at it for like an hour. People are excited to see it because they're not everywhere. It has the prestige, it has the look, the feel, and the interior space and the driving character are now all cohesive. From the last Vantage to this one, the engineering and the resources they put into it, it's a way better driving car. It's even really respectable on track where you're like, yes, I want to drive this. The gearbox, the engine performance are good. The ride and handling are up to task. It's such a special driving experience because it provides that thrill ride. It has so much character. That V8, the rear wheel drive, longer wheelbase, you can drag the ass around everywhere if you choose to do it. And then when you drive it, you just feel like you're special. That's the best way I can put it. It's just a very, very unique car. And if you've come from a lot of 911s, you're going to love the Aston. And even if you haven't had a 911 before, you would just go straight to this because you just look at it like, yes. And, you know, that's what a sports car, that's what a specialty car at this price range is supposed to do. It can't just be technically proficient anymore. So that's where I'm going to leave it. I want to say a big thank you to our PR reps from Aston and Porsche. Great teams to work with. They facilitated this, getting engineers out to us in these cars so we could really try to do a good job in this video. Also, big thank you to Autobahn Country Club for hosting us as always and allowing to tell the stories of all these cars, tell people really appreciate all the work that goes into them. If you live in the Midwest and you want to drive, check out Autobahn. Also, Bridgestone, our title sponsor, thank you for providing us tires and know-how and technical knowledge and supporting these videos at the rate that we have to release them. And thank you to the viewers and Patreons who have been here since the beginning. Catch you later and see you next video.